In my previous life, I was coerced into marrying a talented scholar, only to raise his illegitimate son. When he attained a position of great power, he callously seized my child, extinguished my life, and tarnished my reputation. He shattered my legs and relegated me to the status of a mere concubine. My half-sister, now a princess, accompanied the mother of my foster son to present me with a poisoned cup, mockingly declaring, "You have raised your husband's son, your life has not been in vain." Upon opening my eyes once more, I found myself back on the day when the scholar first beheld my true visage. As he uttered the words of responsibility, I delivered a resounding slap across his face. I turned swiftly to intercept a nearby opulent carriage. As the curtain was drawn aside, the owner of the carriage, with keen eyes, regarded me with a piercing gaze. "An impertinent rogue dares to harass me in public. I beseech you, sir, come to my aid. How dare you speak so, young lady? Do you even know who my young master is, to so audaciously accuse him of being a scoundrel?" A servant beside Zhang Jinzhong exclaimed. "My master is none other than the newly appointed scholar." This drew the attention of passers-by, who paused to whisper amongst themselves. To associate with a scholar, this girl is truly ungrateful. Indeed, she may have intentionally unveiled her face. What a schemer! I composed myself, veiling my face anew, and fixed my gaze upon Zhang Jinzhong. Merely to glimpse my true form, and you speak of responsibility, is that not the very definition of a scoundrel? Zhang Jinzhong smiled gracefully and bowed. "You misunderstand, my lady. It is but a matter of etiquette that I must be accountable for having seen your countenance." I recalled the societal norm that forbade unmarried women from revealing their faces before unfamiliar men, lest they face difficulty in marrying. How foolish I had been in my past life to believe Zhang Jinzhong was a gentleman of honor, willing to take responsibility. Reflecting now, if he were to encounter an unfamiliar woman of unremarkable beauty and uncertain lineage, what man would so readily agree to wed her? Zhang Jinzhong had clearly colluded with my half-sister from the outset. He had orchestrated my public unveiling to force me into a marriage with him upon discovering my true identity, while my half-sister took my place, marrying my original betrothed, the Prince of Chu, and ascending to the role of a princess. I end my previous life. Upon marrying into the Zhang family, I learned of Zhang Jinzhong's wicked mother, which rendered him undesirable in the eyes of many potential brides. I found myself trapped in the confines of the inner courtyard, subjected to my mother-in-law's relentless torment. I was made to wash her feet, abruptly roused to prepare breakfast, and coerced into consuming various harmful concoctions meant to aid in conception. She lamented my inability to bear children, and schemed to procure a concubine for Zhang Jinzhong, though he expressed sympathy, cradling me in his arms and vowing, "Even if we are left childless, I shall never take a concubine." His resolve faltered as his mother, unable to change his fate, brought back a son from their hometown for me to raise. "This is the adopted son under Jinzhong's name as his rightful mother. You must educate him well." As I nurtured this child over the years, Zhang Jinzhong ascended to power, supported by both the marquisate and the royal court. Yet, he turned against me, seizing our son, accusing me of collusion with the steward, and violating my duties as a wife. "In light of your upbringing of our son, I shall break both your legs and demote you to a mere concubine, allowing you to remain in the household. This is my mercy." I was abandoned in a desolate corner of the estate, surviving on cold leftovers and spoiled food, my existence a wretched parody of life. With my legs rendered useless, I could not care for myself. My surroundings reeked of decay. My half-sister, now a princess, accompanied the mother of the son I raised, presenting me with a deadly cup of poison. "For raising your husband's eldest son, you have not lived in vain." To my horror, the child I had nurtured for a decade turned out to be nothing more than Zhang Jinzhong's illegitimate offspring with another woman. I died with unfulfilled rage. Yet, upon recognizing Zhang Jinzhong's true nature, fate granted me a chance for rebirth. I clung desperately to the opulent carriage, unwilling to relent. The owner, with an intense and piercing gaze, remained silent yet exuded an undeniable pressure. Observing his garments and the insignia at his waist, I surmised his esteemed identity. With a surge of determination, I contemplated unveiling my face before him. Yet he halted my hand, instructing, "Come aboard." He then retrieved a token from his bosom, handing it to his attendant. "Go, inform the authorities." As he presented the token, he cast a glance back at me, his voice cold as he inquired, "Are you certain he is a scoundrel?" To accuse the newly appointed scholar was tantamount to striking the emperor's face. However, if I did not proceed, I would be forced to marry Zhang Jinzhong. Clutching my handkerchief tightly, I nodded resolutely. "Sir, I am certain." In the grand halls of the Marquis's residence, my father delivered a stinging slap across my face, his voice laced with exasperation. "Look at the trouble you've caused. Do you even know who he is? How dare you provoke him? Kneeling before the ancestral tablets in the dimly lit shrine, my hair disheveled, I realized my suspicions were correct. The man I had confronted was none other than Qin Ziyuan, a powerful minister of the court, renowned for his extraordinary talents and held in high esteem by the emperor. Qin Ziyuan was a man of immense pride and profound thoughts, his aloof nature making it unwise for others to seek his favor or to offend him. With his testimony on my behalf, Zhang Jinji would be left with no choice but to accept his defeat in silence. I did not push my luck further. I merely wished to let the matter rest and avoid the fate of marrying into the Zhang family. However, my father trembled in fear, anxious that Qin Ziyuan might harbor a grudge against us. In his anxious state, he vented his frustrations upon me, demanding that I kneel and reflect upon my actions. He ordered all servants to leave, leaving me alone in the shrine. But I was no longer the sheltered young girl. I had risen from the depths of the underworld like a vengeful spirit. Even as the flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows, I felt no fear. He could dream of compelling me to submit. As the night deepened, my half-sister, Shun Yan, came to visit. She placed a food box on the ground and, upon seeing my disheveled hair and haggard face, let out a melodic laugh. "Sister, how did you end up in such a pitiful state? You thought that by accusing Zhang Jinji of impropriety, this matter would simply blow over? The people from the Chu Wang's residence have sent word that, as long as the Marquis's daughter is pure, the Chu Wang finds her appearance seen by Zhang Jinji to be quite unsatisfactory." She crouched before me, meeting my gaze with a mocking smile. "Sister, it seems the marriage your mother secured with her life may soon fall into my hands." Shun Yan was the child of my mother's maid, who had climbed into my father's bed. My mother had sacrificed her life to save the Chu Wang's mother, Yu Fei, and on her deathbed, Yu Fei had promised to support me as the future Chu Wangfei. After my mother's passing, Shun Yan was legitimized as my father's wife. In my past life, the Chu Wang favored Shin Yan, and Yu Fei, naturally biased towards her son, turned a blind eye to the promise made, allowing me to marry Zhang Jinji. But why should it be so? Why should they enjoy fortune while my mother and I are left to suffer a tragic fate? With a stoic expression, I retrieved a pastry from the food box. "Since you're here, let us have a conversation." Shun Yan's eyes flickered, and instinctively she covered her nose with a handkerchief, pushing the pastry back toward me. "You eat it." I took a bite of the pastry, and her smile widened as she turned to leave. The night grew darker. Shadows flitted outside the shrine. A bamboo tube thrust through the paper window, releasing wisps of white smoke. I extended my fingertip to block the opening. "Master." I distinctly saw young Master Zhang heading toward the shrine. Could it be that Wei girl intentionally summoned him? My father's rage was palpable, his steps erratic. "Rebellious daughter. Rebellious daughter." His voice abruptly ceased. My stepmother, mistaking the situation for an illicit encounter between me and Zhang Jinji, excitedly pushed my father aside and stepped forward. "Wei girl, I knew you went to the government office today merely to have a quarrel with young Master Zhang." My stepmother covered her face, screaming in terror. Before her, Zhang Jinji and Shun Yan were entwined, refusing to separate even when urged by their servants. I laughed and remarked, "It seems it's your daughter and young Master Zhang who have developed feelings for each other." Silence. My father's face darkened as he commanded them to be pulled apart, warning that no word of tonight's events was to leak out. Yet, Zhang Jinji and Shun Yan were strong, making it difficult to separate them. Shun Yan had laced the pastry she brought me with poison, using the pretense of Zhang Jinji coming to apologize to infiltrate the shrine with ulterior motives. Little did she know, upon my return, I had bribed a lowly servant from her courtyard to sprinkle the drug on her favorite handkerchief. When Shun Yan had my maid tear off my veil in public, I returned the favor. I anticipated their plan would fail and that there would be consequences. So I had devised various countermeasures. As for Zhang Jinji, he indeed sought to force my hand. I feigned compliance, mixing the drug into wine and tricking him into drinking a toast. Zhang Jinji was excessively confident in his appearance and abilities, believing I would fall for his talents, and thus he drank without hesitation. In my previous life, Shun Yan had sung Zhang Jinji's praises more than once before me. Although I am now the Chu Wangfei, my sister truly envied me. Even though your husband's position is modest, he cares for you dearly, even if you cannot bear children. He does not disdain you for cutting off the Zhang family's lineage. Do not be ungrateful. Being the Chu Wangfei is not as glorious as you imagine. It's merely a fade. Since she adored Zhang Jinji so much, I thought it best to let her have him. In the shrine, the servants had all been dismissed. Zhang Jinji and Shun Yan were inextricably linked. My father, frustrated, wished to strike them to separate them, but my stepmother vehemently opposed any harm to Shun Yan. My father, unable to act, decided to save face by dismissing the servants first. He cast a heavy gaze upon me, knowing that tonight's events could not remain concealed. And so? I replied. My father sighed heavily, patting my shoulder, attempting to invoke familial sentiment. You are the legitimate daughter of the Marquis. The honor and disgrace of the Marquis's house are intertwined. Since the Chu Wang has already decided that Yenner shall be his wife, she absolutely cannot marry Zhang Jinji. Where? If word of this leaks, you shall take your sister's place and marry Zhang Jinji. I was unwilling. My father nearly lost his temper, but suppressed his rage, pleading, As your father, I implore you, marrying the newly appointed top scholar is not a slight against you. He coaxed me for a while, but when he saw I remained unmoved, his anger finally boiled over. The will of the parents and the words of the matchmaker dictate your fate. Whether you marry or not is not yours to decide. Zhang Jinji has seen your true face. He must take responsibility. Otherwise, who would wish to marry you? Then I shall never marry.
Fool!
My father erupted in fury, declaring he would discipline me. I could only wish to capture the scene of Zhang Jinji and Shun Yan in their lascivious act and spread it throughout the capital, shaming both my father and the Shun family. As I was pinned to the ground, I glanced at the timepiece. Instinctively, I touched the token hidden at my waist. It was time. Some items had been lost, and it was time for the Marquis's residents to receive them back. If my father were to discover that someone's token was now within the Marquis's residence, it would surely frighten him to death. Just as my father raised his stick to strike me, a young servant rushed in. Before he could speak, a chilling voice interrupted. Lord Shun. I turned my head. Qin Ziyuan, clad in dark garments, entered with a gaze as cold as ice, akin to a deity of death, accompanied by a cadre of stern-faced guards. He glanced down at me, then looked at my father with a smirk that was neither a smile nor a frown. Lord Shun, why are you so agitated? My father had always been one to bully the weak and fear the strong. Upon seeing Qin Ziyuan, he hunched his back slightly, a sycophantic smile creeping onto his face. Lord Qin has come at this late hour. May I inquire what brings you here? Meanwhile, my stepmother swiftly kicked the two individuals into the offerings alcove. Qin Ziyuan cast a glance and then withdrew his gaze. Some valuable items have gone missing. It seems they can only be retrieved from your esteemed residence. My father's complexion shifted dramatically. H this. The next moment, he witnessed Qin Ziyuan extend his hand toward me. Miss Shen, please return what rightfully belongs to its owner. I understood that sincerity was more effective than deceit in his presence, and there was no point in quarreling. I withdrew the token from my bosom and placed it in his palm. My father, astonished and furious, raised his hand to strike me, only to be halted by Qin Ziyuan. Since it has been recovered, this matter shall no longer be pursued. He cast a sidelong glance at me before preparing to leave. My father and stepmother simultaneously breathed sighs of relief. This was my chosen witness for Shun Yan and Zhang Jinji. He could not simply depart. I decisively grasped the hem of his garment. Shun Wei, do not be disrespectful. My father was nearly beside himself with worry. Qin Ziyuan halted his steps, meeting my gaze. In that fleeting moment, I realized he had long understood my intentions to exploit him. Yet, he had no intention of acquiescing. I cast a beseeching glance his way, loosening my garments to slowly pull him closer, whispering, My lord, I am aware of the whereabouts of the individual you are investigating. Upon hearing this, Qin Ziyuan crouched before me, his indifferent gaze scrutinizing my expression, as if assessing the veracity of my words. After a pause, he rose once more. His trusted aide, witnessing the exchange, approached the offering table, while my stepmother positioned herself defiantly in front, unwilling to yield. Madam Ho, I apologize, the aide said. shoving her aside and forcefully ejecting both her and me from the scene, where Zhang Jinji and Shen Yan remained tightly entwined. It was evident that the second young lady was clandestinely meeting her lover, which explained Lord Shen's furious demeanor. With a single utterance, Qin Ziyuan had to find the situation, since their feelings were mutual. I would inform the emperor the next day and request a marriage between the newly appointed top scholar and the second young lady. My father gasped, "No, that won't be necessary." Qin Ziyuan, bearing a visage 20 years younger than my father, patted his shoulder, saying, "When young people are in love, why should Lord Shen play the villain who disrupts their union?" My father turned pale. In our dynasty, a young woman seen with an unfamiliar man suffers a tarnished reputation, let alone in such an embrace. To have Qin Ziyuan formally request the emperor for marriage was a considerable gain for the Shen family. I slipped a note containing an address into Qin Ziyuan's hand, thanking him softly. Qin Ziyuan pressed his lips together tightly. "This shall not occur again." Before my return, I sought out my acquaintance, Xilan. Xilan was the leading courtesan of the Kimok Spring Pavilion, and in a past life, she had saved my life. I wished to repay her kindness, but she insisted that as a proper young lady, it was inappropriate for her to associate closely with someone like me. Privately, I could only instruct my maid to discreetly deliver her cosmetics and fine garments, ensuring to leave her a share of any treasures I acquired. Eventually, she departed from the Kimok Spring Pavilion, and I secretly provided her with a house using my dowry, allowing her to settle in the capital. Despite the years apart, we had become friends. In this life, she still refused to meet me. So, I declared my intent to hang myself at the entrance of the Kimok Spring Pavilion to see her. I racked my brain, recalling and verifying with Xilan, and confirmed that Qin Ziyuan was currently investigating the whereabouts of a corrupt official. In my previous life, this official was apprehended after my marriage to Zhang Jinji, during which I had heard him mention a few details. Now, it served as my leverage. Xilan typically encountered influential nobles and dignitaries. She was resourceful and well-liked, with her fellow courtesans considering her their cornerstone. I intended to leverage her advantages at the Kimok Spring Pavilion to establish my own network of intelligence. The emperor's decree of marriage indicated that Shen Yan's union with Zhang Jinji was a foregone conclusion. However, my father remained obstinate. He believed that Shen Yan marrying the crown prince would be far more advantageous for him than my own union with the crown prince. He sought to send me to the wedding carriage meant for Zhang's family, effectively substituting Shen Yan as Zhang Jinji's bride. In the closing of his letter, Xilan wrote, "Be cautious in all matters." Thus, when my father summoned me, I had already anticipated his intentions. I refused to marry. He must have prepared countless arguments, all of which I dismissed with a single retort, leaving him crimson with rage. "I initially wished to negotiate amicably with you," he fumed. "Since you are so disobedient, I shall remove your mother's memorial tablet from the ancestral hall and also from the Zhang family graves. Your lack of filial piety is your mother's fault. How dare you?" I smashed his cherished teacup, challenging him. "Go ahead and try. I can find a Qin Ziyuan to advocate for me, and I could summon countless others to ensure you live in eternal unrest." The atmosphere in the study grew exceedingly tense, oppressive to the point of discomfort. Ultimately, my father conceded, grinding his teeth in frustration. Leave. On my way back, I passed by Shen Yan's courtyard, where I heard her still smashing items, exclaiming, "What top scholar? He is nothing but a worthless fool." Shen Wei is indeed a perfect match for a fool. Not me. I refused to marry. My stepmother attempted to console her, but was met with a disheveled retreat as Shen Yan burst from the room. Upon seeing me, her eyes widened. "Shen Wei, are you pleased now?" I smiled sweetly. "Of course." With that, I disregarded my stepmother's fierce expression and departed. Unbeknownst to me, my stepmother had whispered something into my father's ear, compelling him to insist on removing my mother from the Zhang family graves. He accused her of moral failings, alleging an affair with an outsider, intending to slander her reputation, just as Shen Yan had done to me in my previous life. "Surely you wouldn't want your mother to be disturbed after so many years, would you?" My father wore a smug expression, convinced of his triumph. "Your stepmother was once a maid from your mother's family, serving her for many years. Many will believe her words." Fine, I acquiesced to substitute for Shen Yan in the wedding procession. Just before the wedding, Shen Yan visited my room to gloat. My dear sister, no matter how you scheme, in the end, you still have to marry into the Zhang family? Unless, of course, you no longer care for your mother's reputation. I placed a phoenix hairpin into my hair, casting a languid glance her way. My first public appearance as a bride would involve my husband and me being depicted on the invitation sent to various households. From then on, I would become a woman of the Zhang family, no longer questioning my origins. When I arrived at the Zhang residence to wed, pulling down the bridal veil, the guests would see a face entirely different from that on the invitation. Neither the Ho family nor the Zhang family could escape the consequences. At worst, we would all perish together. Moreover, I could report my father's treason, balancing the scales of merit and fault, perhaps even witnessing their downfall. Yet, I did not anticipate that the person I would ultimately encounter was Qin Ziyuan. I looked at him in astonishment.
Surprised?
Qin Ziyuan cast a significant glance my way. Did you not express reluctance to marry Zhang Jinji? You stopped me in the street, painstakingly invited me to the Ho residence as a witness, and are aware of the whereabouts of the person I am pursuing. What exactly do you intend to achieve? Do you wish to marry the crown prince? I stepped closer, my gaze resolute. I seek your protection, my lord. Qin Ziyuan suddenly extended his hand, tracing the intricate patterns on my wedding gown with a gentle tone. Many seek my protection. What will you offer in exchange? Everything. I grasped his hand firmly, willing to trade all I possessed. Qin Ziyuan smirked slightly and abruptly stood up. He was tall, and I instinctively took 2 steps back, but he tightened his grip on my wrist. What are you afraid of? I closed my eyes, my other hand gripping my sash, at which point he released me. The Kimok Spring Pavilion can have 2 masters. I understood. Just as I was about to pledge my loyalty when he added, the Qin residence also lacks a mistress. I find Miss Shin quite suitable. I looked up in confusion, but he averted his gaze. Gifted and shrewd, adept at managing the intricacies of the Qin residence, she would be a fitting choice. What? Qin Ziyuan was perceptive. Rather than being manipulated by the Ho residence regarding marriage, it seemed that marrying into the Qin residence was a commendable alternative. I consented. Qin Ziyuan instructed me to return and await further notice. Upon returning to the Ho residence, I discovered that Shen Yan had indeed been sent to the Zhang family. She had initially remained in her chamber, relishing the thought of my futile efforts to avoid marrying Zhang Jinji until she was struck unconscious, secretly transported from the Ho residence, and placed in the bridal carriage bound for the Zhang family. My father, upon hearing the news, was utterly distraught. He had already lost 1 daughter and could now only focus on keeping me stable, speaking to me with feigned kindness. Your stepmother has been misled by slander. I have punished her. Your mother will not be removed from the ancestral grave. The marriage with the crown prince must proceed as planned. He had never thought highly of Zhang Jinji, intent on winning the crown prince's favor. If not for the crown prince's interest in Zhang Jinji, the Ho residence would have completely discarded me. His plans were interrupted when Qin Ziyuan came to propose marriage. After Qin Ziyuan departed, my father erupted in fury but ultimately resigned himself to the situation. I suspected he had become somewhat dazed after the shock. When Shen Yan and Zhang Jinji returned home, they appeared radiant, adorned in exquisite attire, beaming with satisfaction. The die was cast. She could only showcase that her life in the Zhang family was going splendidly. Word of Qin Ziyuan's proposal had barely left his lips before the crown prince's residence hurriedly came to rescind the engagement. Shen Yan mocked me. It seems the crown prince truly has no affection for my sister. After much calculation, it seems none of us have truly gained anything. I cast a fleeting glance at her fatigued visage obscured by heavy makeup and remarked with a smile, Sister, the daily torment of being governed by your mother-in-law must be quite unbearable. No? Shen Yan's expression shifted dramatically. She brushed a stray lock of hair from her forehead, her smile faltering. Just as she was about to speak, I interjected, when you and Zhang Jinji initially conspired to ensnare me into marrying him, you surely had a clear understanding of the Zhang family's insidious nature, did you not? What pretense are you putting on before me now? Shen Yan finally panicked, exclaiming, What conspiracy? Do not slander me. Shen Wei, refrain from making baseless accusations. She fled in disarray. In high spirits, I poured myself a cup of tea. eager to observe the fate that awaited Shen Yan in the Zhang household. The sufferings I endured in my past life would be repaid in full, and she would taste the bitter fruits of her own actions. On the day of our grand wedding, once all the rituals were completed, only Qin Ziyuan and I remained in the chamber. The silence was palpable. As I watched Qin Ziyuan approach me with an expression of calmness, I found myself momentarily entranced. In my previous life, he was favored by the emperor, wielding immense power, and countless noble families sought to forge alliances with the Qin clan through him. Yet, I had never heard of him marrying. I had scarcely seen him more than a few times. Before my demise, the king of Chu and the crown prince were locked in a fierce rivalry, but after the crown prince met with peril in Jiangnan, his whereabouts became a mystery. Qin Ziyuan had rushed to Jiangnan to rescue him. I remained unaware of their eventual fates. Such a legendary figure had now become my husband. He extinguished 2 candles, plunging the room into a deeper twilight, which added a layer of nuance to the atmosphere. Qin Ziyuan stood before me, his hand slowly reaching toward my waist, fastening a unique token. In the future, should you see this token, it will be as if you see me. It grants you command over all my personal guards. Stay vigilant in times of danger. Rest early. We must visit the Qima Spring Pavilion tomorrow. With that, he turned and departed. I pondered the weight of his responsibilities and understood why he had risen to power at such a young age. Upon taking charge of the Qin household, I discovered that, despite its grandiosity, it was far simpler than the Zhang residence. Life unfolded with a certain ease. Shen Yan, however, was not as fortunate. The tales of a wicked stepmother in the Zhang family were tolerable for me, as my own mother had passed away early and my father was of no support. In my youth, I could bide my time, confident that one day she would perish before me. But Shen Yan, coddled by her stepmother since childhood, soon returned to the marquis's residence to lament her plight. Her stepmother, empathetic towards her daughter, boldly confronted the Zhang family, seeking to reason with them. Having been raised in a prominent household, and having served as the lady of the marquis's residence for years, she was ill-equipped to contend with Madame Zhang. And in the midst of the public spectacle, she declared her intent to take her daughter home. After a severe reprimand from my father, she was confined. Zhang Jinji, fearing the loss of the marquis's support, urged Madame Zhang to relent in her treatment of Shen Yan. The commotion had spread throughout the capital. Moreover, Xilan informed me, I have recently heard that Lord Shen has been making frequent visits to various families, inquiring about our Yuanyang Hall's master, claiming he wishes to consult with the hall's leader. I instructed her to enlist trustworthy sisters to meet with him. Before Xilan could respond, my father summoned me back to the residence for a meal. It was evident that he would not summon me without purpose. Upon my return, I found Shen Yan already present. She appeared utterly worn, weeping in her stepmother's embrace. My father had yet to arrive, and Shen Yan incessantly lamented. My mother-in-law insists I take medicine, berating me as a hen that cannot lay eggs. Her words are so coarse and vulgar, it's repulsive. She demands I wash her feet daily, and they stink. When have I ever endured such indignities at home? Zhang Jinji sat awkwardly beside her. The moment he spotted me, he seemed to see a savior, immediately rising to greet me. Elder sister. I cast a sidelong glance at him. Upon my arrival, Shen Yan ceased her tears, instead linking arms with Zhang Jinji and looking at me with a sense of triumph. Sister, why did you return alone? Did your brother-in-law not accompany you? I have heard that your relationship is not particularly harmonious. Could it be that the rumors are true? You look utterly gaunt. I chuckled softly and took a seat in front of them. My husband is preoccupied with state affairs. Not everyone possesses such leisure. Both Zhang Jinji and Shen Yan's expression soured. I regarded Shen Yan, leisurely spinning the bracelet on my wrist, a unique piece procured from the treasure pavilion in the East Sea. Qin Ziyuan had paid a handsome price for it, claiming it was for me to flaunt. Indeed, managing the Qin household was a formidable task. I smiled and remarked, being the Prime Minister's wife is not as glamorous as it appears. Ah, it is merely a facade of splendor. I returned her previous words verbatim. Shen Yan's countenance darkened further. Ultimately, she refused to eat, her temper flaring as she dragged Zhang Jinji away, muttering insults about his ineptitude. She presumed I could not hear, yet Qin Ziyuan's men relayed her remarks back to me. Her stepmother, Unable to bear it any longer, snapped, "Shenwei, you are truly ruthless," and hurriedly departed. When my father returned, I was left alone with him. "Speak quickly. Your presence is nauseating," I said, leisurely sipping my tea. My father erupted in fury. "Filial piety is paramount. Shenwei, how dare you speak to your father in such a manner? I toyed with a token given to me by Qin Ziyuan. If you do not speak soon, I shall take my leave." Upon seeing the token, my father's anger dissipated significantly. He forced a smile and gently inquired, "Shall we ask them to withdraw for now?" Once we were alone, he finally revealed his true intentions. He requested that I discreetly observe Qin Ziyuan's every action and report back to him. "The Marquis's residence has never lacked for your needs. You are a daughter of the Shin family, and now it is time for you to repay the Shin family." He added, "Where, no matter how close you grow to your husband, you are still a Shin. Only when the Shin family remains steadfast can you establish a foothold in the Qin household and earn Qin Ziyuan's respect." "Very well," I acquiesced. And he looked at me with disbelief. I smiled. "Father is right. Your daughter shall heed your counsel. After all, my mother still rests in the Shin family ancestral grave. It is only natural that I assist them." My father immediately placed his trust in me. "I am counting on you, my child." My instincts told me that my father's recent flurry of activity was likely connected to the King of Chu. Yet, the king would not pose a threat to the crown prince's position for at least another 5 years. Such ostentation was not his style. Something must have changed. "I heard whispers that you met with your father-in-law today." As night fell, Qin Ziyuan unexpectedly returned to dine with me. He served a portion of my favorite dish, wine-steamed lamb, into my bowl. I looked at him in astonishment. How did he know to select my preferred dish? It was merely a meal. Yet I recognized the importance of loyalty, so I would not betray Qin Ziyuan's whereabouts. Qin Ziyuan blinked but ultimately refrained from saying anything further. After dinner, he entered my chamber with a pot of flowers. "I have heard you have been waking in fright during the night. These flowers are said to aid sleep. I thought I might place them in your room to see if they prove effective." I had indeed been haunted by dreams of the past lately, and I was surprised by his keen observation. Qin Ziyuan maintained his impassive demeanor, though a slight smile graced his lips. "As my wife, it is only natural that I concern myself with your well-being." I looked at him as though he were a ghost. He cleared his throat. "Then, I shall not intrude upon your rest any longer. Remember to accompany me to next month's Wanshou festival. I will have someone prepare several garments for you that you might favor." I nodded and saw him off. I then penned a letter to Shilan, urging her to keep a close watch. A maidservant positioned near Shun Yan also found a way to relay information to me, claiming she had recently seen the King of Chu making clandestine visits to the Zhang residence. I frowned. Based on my previous life, the King of Chu would not have been interested in Zhang Jinji at this juncture. Moreover, under Qin Ziyuan's deliberate suppression, the inner quarters were poorly managed and frequently caused embarrassment, making Zhang Jinji an object of disdain. How could the King of Chu possibly visit the Zhang residence so frequently? Before long, news surfaced that Shun Yan was with child. I was utterly stunned. On that fateful day within the ancestral hall, I administered a potent poison to Zhang Jinji, a concoction that would render him incapable of siring descendants for all eternity. Both Shun Yan and Zhang Jinji were fully aware of this grim reality. I had assumed it was mere gossip until the Wanshou festival, when I beheld Shun Yan gracefully supporting Zhang Jinji, her figure noticeably more voluptuous, despite her not showing signs of pregnancy. Zhang Jinji cast a penetrating gaze in my direction, his eyes laden with complexity. Such a look was hardly befitting of the newly initiated Zhang Jinji in the imperial court. A shiver ran down my spine. Upon observing the King of Chu, his brow was furrowed, his demeanor far removed from the vigor of his youth. While the ministers appeared amiable on the surface, an undercurrent of unrest permeated the atmosphere. Suddenly, Qin Ziyuan grasped my hand firmly. "Do not be anxious," he reassured me. I turned to him, clasping his hand, and replied with a smile, "I am not anxious." However, midway through the banquet, assassins infiltrated the gathering. Their ostensible target was the emperor. Yet the martial prowess of the assassins confronting Qin Ziyuan far exceeded that of those aiming to slay the emperor. In his determination to safeguard the emperor, Qin Ziyuan dispatched all the guards to protect him, leaving us cornered. The assassins initially sought to strike at Qin Ziyuan but abruptly redirected their blades towards me. Beyond the assassin, I caught a glimpse of Shun Yan's sinister smile. Her lips formed the words, Dai Shen Wei. Yet, to my astonishment, in the next moment, Qin Ziyuan bravely intercepted the blow meant for me. Qin Ziyuan. Once the assassins were eliminated, and with the emperor infuriated, a thorough investigation was mandated. Today, all my esteemed ministers have been startled, he declared, permitting them to return home. To my utter disbelief, my father, usually timid, boldly stepped forward to voice his concerns. The ministers paused, intrigued by his unexpected audacity. My heart raced. I am aware of Qin Xiang's exceptional talents, and the emperor has always placed his trust in him. However, I must assert that Qin Xiang harbors treasonous intentions, unworthy of the emperor's favor. He presented confidential reports to the Grand Coordinator, alleging that Qin Ziyuan, despite his outward loyalty, was secretly colluding with the Crown Prince, seeking to usurp the emperor's authority. The Crown Prince retorted angrily, I am the emperor's designated heir. How could I possibly conspire against him? My father continued, the information I possess originates from the renowned Yuanyang Hall, which can gather intelligence that ordinary folk cannot access. Upon hearing this, the king of Chu was visibly alarmed, feeling too youthful to confront Qin Xiang. Yet my father's daughter is the wife of Qin Xiang. The king of Chu approached him, seeking my father's assistance to verify the truth of the claims, lest they wrongfully accuse a loyal minister and alienate him. However, the evidence I uncovered unequivocally indicated Qin Xiang's treasonous ambitions. The emperor's expression darkened ominously. Zhang Jinji stepped forward, bowing to the emperor before stating, I once had a minor disagreement with Qin Xiang, which caused the ministers to distance themselves from him, illustrating the power he wields, likely nurturing treasonous thoughts. I half-supported Qin Ziyuan, urging his confidant to hasten and summon the physician. I can manage, Qin Ziyuan insisted, loosening his grip. You may seek justice for your husband. Our eyes met, and I solemnly replied, very well. My father, witnessing my resolve, became increasingly agitated, casting anxious glances my way. Zhang Jinji, now brimming with confidence, adjusted his attire, his gaze toward me carrying an air of command, entirely different from when he addressed me as elder sister, affirming his resolve with a nod. Nonsense. They are merely framing one another. I pointed at the king of Chu and declared, Your Majesty, the true traitor is he. My father, infuriated, exclaimed, Rebellious daughter. What are you saying? He turned to the emperor, Your Majesty, if you do not believe me, I have witnesses. I am acquainted with the leader of Yuanyang Hall, who is currently waiting outside. The emperor's expression remained icy. Summon him. My father and those around him were far too hasty. Perhaps it was the same for the reborn king of Chu and Zhang Jinji. Their impatience revealed that they had failed in their previous lives. Wretched fools. This is the woman saved by the minister's wife near the mountains. Little did I know she is the leader of Yuanyang Hall, Hongyang. Shun Yan emerged, supporting her waist, casting a scornful glance in my direction. Hongyang, please speak. Yet Hongyang approached me, bowing respectfully. My lady. Everyone gazed at me in disbelief, especially Zhang Jinji, whose complexion drained of color. After all, we had once shared a bond as spouses. He had some understanding of my character. Your Majesty, what Qin Ziyuan and I have conveyed is the truth, as you can now observe. The favored concubine did not attend today. I sensed we had a significant advantage. A few days prior, I had relayed all the information I had gathered to Qin Ziyuan and clandestinely visited the emperor. I discovered that on the day of the wedding, Qin Ziyuan had remarked that among the two masters in the Qima Chunfeng, one was the emperor, not himself. Should the king of Chu and his allies dare to act today, their demise would be assured. The emperor's fury finally erupted, commanding the imprisonment of the king of Chu and Zhang Jinji, pending their fate. My father trembled as he approached me, tugging at my sleeve. Where? Your Majesty, I beseech you for a favor. The emperor waved his hand, a smile breaking across his face. Ziyuan has already informed me. I have devised a plan for you. Your mother once saved one of my concubines, and in gratitude, she arranged your marriage to the king of Chu, recognizing you as her adopted daughter. Now, however, she has turned her back on you. Therefore, I shall personally bestow upon you the title of Princess Rongyang, freeing you from the marquise. And you may decide where to relocate your mother's remains from the Shun family ancestral grave. Overjoyed, I felt tears prickling my eyes as I knelt, exclaiming, "Thank you, Your Majesty." In the following days, they were all ordered to execution. Before their demise, I visited them in the prison. "What do you want?" Shun Yan screeched upon seeing me, rising to curse me. The prison was harsh, and she had been unable to retain her child. Although the favored concubine was also in dire straits, she had persistently pleaded with the emperor for Shun Yan's clemency, but upon learning of Shun Yan's miscarriage, she ceased her entreaties. Realizing she could no longer salvage her situation, she wept daily in the cold palace. "Do you find amusement in our plight?" I chuckled. "Is it not glaringly obvious?" Shun Yan, enraged, leaned against the bars, her face twisted in fury, demanding, "Shun Wei, why did you seek Qin Ziyuan's help on the streets that day? Why did you refuse to marry Zhang Jinji? Have you truly been reborn?" I replied quietly, "Indeed, rather than saying I have been reborn, it is more accurate to say that time has reset. You see, have you not returned as well?" Shun Yan lunged to grasp my throat, but I stepped back, observing her struggle with a sense of calm. My father, having beaten my stepmother into submission, looked at me with a pleading expression, "Look at your father. He loves your mother dearly. You are all I have left in this world. Can you bear to see me perish?" Quite heartlessly, I thought, "When you reach the other side, please do not disturb my mother." Meanwhile, Zhang Jinji's complexion was ashen, even avoiding my gaze. When your childhood companions and eldest son come to the capital to seek you, they will coincidentally witness the Zhang family's downfall. They, too, will find themselves imprisoned elsewhere. I trust that on the day of execution, the three of you will be reunited. Zhang Jinji's pupils constricted as he lunged towards me, seething. "You vile woman!" The more he cursed, the more elated I became. These despicable villains were finally destined to vanish from my world. I attended the public execution on the day they were beheaded in the marketplace. The countless eyes that could not close in death healed the nightmares I had harbored for so long. "My lady, it is time to return home." Qin Ziyuan approached to escort me. He remained oblivious to the depth of my enmity toward the king of Chu and the Zhang family, yet I kept my silence. And he did not inquire further. "I have sought a picturesque sanctuary, a place where both you and mother would undoubtedly find delight." I inquired of Qin Ziyuan why he had chosen me, to which he replied, "It was you who first selected me. You are the first, and likely the last, to dare to pilfer my token. Only those with courage are worthy to stand alongside me." He grasped my hand, a gentle smile gracing his lips. Moreover, in this moment, I find myself elevated to the status of a minister, Princess Rongyang. The opulent carriage I once halted now finds me deserving to take my place within it. The princess herself wishes to witness the discerning eye of Prime Minister Qin. Should I discern that mother disapproves, you must seek elsewhere. Qin Ziyuan's eyes sparkled like bright stars, a rare smile illuminating his face. "Naturally, my judgment is of the highest caliber." Indeed, I replied with a smile, drawing back the curtain to gaze outside. The sky was a brilliant expanse, a splendid season indeed. If life were to continue in such a manner, it would not be so bad. The end of the tale. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, do remember to like and subscribe. Until we meet again in our next story.